Assalamu alaikum and peace be with you. President Theodore Roosevelt once said, "I believe that the more you know about the past, the more you are prepared for the future." In that light, we are kicking off what we hope will be a series of events that record the founding of the Muslim community in the San Francisco Bay Area, also known as MCA, Muslim Community Association, which is based in Silicon Valley. And for those who are not familiar with the geography, it's in Northern California. My name is Javed Mohammed, and I am the host of today's program. All the participants in today's program are active members of the community, and you'll be able to see that as at least a brief bio of them in the description in the video. The program is being recorded on Sunday, December 20th, 2020, and we are 9 months into the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting lockdown. I just want to acknowledge Shakeel Masood, who started the WhatsApp group on July 15, 2017, whose members are on the call today, as well as later on Razi Mohuiddin, who once the lockdown started, suggested having regular calls to check in with each other. And eventually it turned into this weekly call, which is how this program is being recorded. So without further ado, let's get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. So this call today is all about community. And I thought, why not just start things off by asking, what does community mean to you, and how did this community start? So Hamad, can you kick it off?
Yeah, so Assalamu alaikum. So I came to US in 1980 and in August 80, and I landed up in Sunnyvale in the Bay Area because my uncle, Dr. Wahid Siddiqui, was here, and he was a very active member of the small community that was in the Bay Area. And most of the stuff was centered around San Francisco at that time. The Jones Mosque, Jones Street Mosque was there. For me, actually coming from Pakistan, where we were not very active Islamically, okay, typically just we were a student. So it was actually an eye-opener for me to see the local community, the small group of Muslims in the Bay Area, who were so involved in the trying to get their children to Islamic school and just be very active, trying to keep the family together and keep the Islamic tradition alive. So it was actually eye-opener for me, because we took it for very granted or when we came over here. So there was nothing at that time here in the Bay Area. So there's no MCA, there's no South Bay. South Bay was kind of trying to get its feet running. And and I remember, like, even to somebody died, it was just a massive amount of effort to just even arrange a janaza for them. I remember a Chinese older lady died, and his family wanted to do that. So for me, the growth of this community, from especially the MCA and both the South Bay, I would say, is something that is amazing. That what has happened in like 40 years, from being zero to like such a big organization, and it meant a lot to me. I've been a passive member and not a very active member in MC or any other organizations, but the utility that has provided as a family, has been great. Okay, that's all I have for now. Okay, so.
All right. So does somebody else want to kind of take it from there? So Hamad talked about some of the challenges of starting a community. He talked specifically about funerals. Obviously, there's a lot more. There's finding places of prayer. There's finding halal meat. Somebody want to take the conversation on from there? Your first move when you moved to the Bay Area, and what some of those experiences? Salim Rahman?
I came to Bay Area in 1984, a month after a Masjid al-Noor was, a church was purchased, and, we had a fundraiser, and everybody was together, Arab and non-Arabs, everybody together. Very close community, mashallah. And we were having this, prayers, regular prayers. But I think, from there on, when the community started, expanding, then we were thinking other venues also what to do. But there were differences, even at that time in 1985, a big differences, conflict came up when some scholar from England came and he tried to polarize the community. But that was overcome, mashallah, very, very good way by then President Ali Matawalli. And we were back together, and inshallah, that continued on.
Okay. So from there, you talked about the start of Masjid Noor. So Dr. Alauddin, you want to kind of take it from there, then talk about the acquisition of the MCA and how that happened and the challenges there?
So I came here in 1981. And what was community to me, because so I stayed with my brother. I asked him, I need to go someplace where there's masjid. He introduced me to a neighbor, and he told me he's the guy who might be able to help you. So I talked to him. May Allah bless him. He passed away a couple of years ago, Saqib. And he took me to, there used to be an office called MSA back then. So ISNA, before ISNA was created, it was MSA. So MSA has Western Zone headquarters right across in the complex, office complex from MCA current building. And there was a warehouse where they used to have an office, and in the back in the warehouse, they used to pray. So I still remember first time when I went for Jummah there were less than 50 people, I would say, 4 or 5 ladies, and not even 50, 25 people. And Brother Salim Sharif, that Tahsin was referring to, he was the president of West Zone Mass at that time. And that was where the activities would happen. To me, community was where I can go, I can interact with people of similar values and mindset, and where you get Islamic activities. So that's what I was looking for. That's how I came to there. But then, the same old issue, the parking issue, started creating problems. So they had to kick us out. And then there was a elementary school which was vacant on, what's the name of the street? Duane. Between Wolf and Lawrence Expressway on the Duane, there was a school that was rented out.
Near AMD.
Near AMD, exactly. And then we used to pray our Jummah there. MSA had an office there. And that's from there, then Brother Salim Rahman said in 1984, we ended up buying Masjid Noor. It was a church. It was did not need required zoning permit, was not an issue. They had some limit, some parking. And Allah bless those Libyan brothers, 3 Libyan brothers. They
Looks like you froze.
Yes.
All right. So Bashir, you want to take the conversation from there?
Yeah, I moved to Bay Area in 1981. I was here for first couple of years, then moved out of this area for like 3-4 years. Came back and in 1989 and I've been here since then. What does community means to me? Community really is where my family is, where my values are, and we wanted to grow our family in Islamic environment. So that's what it means to me.
Okay, great. And Tahsin Adib, you want to talk about some of the challenges that you faced in both individually and collectively as a community when you moved here?
Yeah, I moved in here in 1992. Even though I was in the United States in 85, I was mostly on the East Coast and Midwest for 3 years each on each side of it. And raising a family after seeing my other extended family members marrying it to the local Americans. But growing up and seeing the things, what I was seeing from the families was the kids were deviating out from Islamic values. That was a big shocker to me. And I didn't expect it at that time, knowing them from my childhood, but that's what it is. So basically, we made sure, me and my wife, we decided that even though she had a very good job at Kaiser in Cleveland, I moved here first, and I told her that I will move, and then you can come follow me up. So that's what we did in 1992. I remember still the date after she elected Clinton, and I dropped them at my in-laws, and I drove all the way back from Cleveland to San Francisco. Challenges, community was everything to me, basically, and we were looking for an Islamic, something we could do. So we lived on Homestead Road in an apartment at the time when we moved in, and wanted to make sure my kids are acquired to the community purposes and they know what Islam is about, despite teaching from their grandparents, ourselves, we were trying to do it. But that was the most important thing. Alhamdulillah, those were the days when Masjid al-Nur, especially in the month of Ramadan, I still remember the month of Ramadan. If you come late to Masjid al-Nur, you are standing outside to pray. And the parking lot was full of people who were praying. And I do remember very vividly, we prayed in several times in the rain. It was pouring rain. Mostly our community used to pray for 8 rakats and after that. So after 8 rakats, at those days, I used to pray like 20 rakats. So I used to come inside looking for a heater or a warmer. That's how packed Masjid al-Nur used to be back in 1993, 1994.
Okay, I think we kind of get a sense of that one. So,
yeah, then we started looking for the MCA building, looked one in the Walsh and then the HP building. And that's where after Jummah, they used to make the announcements, go look for that. And that's how it was like a thrilling victory kind of a thing for me. And followed by Granada Islamic School. We made sure our kids go to Granada Islamic School. That's what we did.
Okay, thanks very much. So Shakeel Masood, you want to give us a sense of when you moved here and some of the challenges you felt we faced as a community?
Yes, I, like so many other people, I moved here in 1984, right, in February 1984. And that is when Brother Naeem was, mashallah, he was my roommate. And he took me to Duane, San Miguel, the name of I think the street. And my first Jummah I prayed there, and I was just waking up and opening my eyes and looking around. Brother Tariq Murad, I remember very, very vividly, he was there. So it's a different feeling, right? And then after that, of course, we bought the church and we converted and all that. We already talked about that. And so challenges, the thing which I really want to emphasize, building masjid is one thing, but populating it is another thing. And I still remember Brother Yusuf Shahabi and myself, and I was just a volunteer. We used to call people in the morning for Fajr prayer. So we started with very, very few people, and our goal was to get at least 20 people for Fajr prayer. So in those days, there was a dial phones, no cell phone, nothing like that. So we used to call cold calls, so I was given 5 names as everybody. So that is how we populated. So the barakah you see in Masjid al-Nur or MCA now, it is not just building buildings. It is dedicated work has gone into it, and a lot of prayers and a lot of good people in the community, mashallah. So that is number one I would like to say. And the second thing is, of course, I remember the community, like Brother Tahseen said, community iftar happening where right now the funeral homes are. The ghusl facilities in Masjid Nur, that is the area we used to have community iftar in 1984, 85 time frame or something. And we had, after and that was another feat, another beautiful thing. Brother Ahmad Wasi, may Allah give maghfirah, he used to make tea in a big pot. These are things I like to mention. I cannot forget those kind of scenes, right? And he was a selfless, mashallah, very sincere brother, and we used to stand in line for the tea, for example, right? And of course, I've seen, like I mentioned, through the boards and everything, in the back rooms, and the MCA started, Brother Mehboob Khan, and BOT meetings, and Brother Muhammad Ali is not here today, but his apartment, which he's living, he moved here in 1985, and that is, his apartment is number 10. We used to call it 10 Downing Street. All because Masjid Nur was a small facility. We could not hold meetings there. Brother Naeem knows. And so we used to go to his walking distance, go to his apartment. So many meetings has happened. And all the MCA planning commission, all the LSI logic, what is called the lawsuits and everything. Even the director, I think the city council director used to come to Muhammad Ali's apartment. Yep. I forgot his name. So alhamdulillah, so many memories. I can write a book if I have time or something. And so basically GIS, Granada Islamic School, Mariam, it was used to be Mariam School. In the back, again, those 2 rooms, which are now ghusl facility, that is how it started. And the people who are really commendable, the people who volunteered, their children, Brother Fuad Khatib, Brother Tariq Murad, Brother Mehboob Khan, Brother I think Manzoor Ghori. So these are the first class of GIS started from there. And from Mariam School, it became GIS and all that. Right. Yeah. So,
okay. We'll just give some other folks here a chance to speak also. So Najam, what does community mean to you, and when did you move here?
I came here, alhamdulillah, 1997. But like I said, I was born here. in the United States. I moved around quite a lot from Chicago onwards. I lived a couple years overseas. Basically, I followed my good friend Mujtaba Ghouse, who's the one who you can blame Mujtaba for me coming in this area. And so he's the one who told me about this area. And I knew about the area because of the high-tech area work. So I came here from living from overseas, and I was introduced to Naeem Raza at that time. And I worked for his company coming from overseas. And then slowly and surely, I was always active in my community back in Chicago and everywhere else in Muslim community. And of course, dealing with Mujtaba and everything else, and MCA was right there in our community, living in Santa Clara. So I joined the community, put my kids in Grenada, and alhamdulillah, I enjoyed the community very much. I mean, watching the community grow, the diversity from young and old, first generation, second generation. I mean, like any other community, there are growing pains, and MCA is still going through that pains of what does it mean to be different communities, different generation. How do we communicate between? That's a subject that I know that later on will be asked about first generation versus converts versus that. MCA, mashallah, the large community is facing that, and inshallah, we'll see what inshallah we'll overcome that.
Okay. So Zabih Akhtar, you wanted to talk about when you moved here and what you remember of those early days?
Yeah, when I moved here in 1984, I met Bashir and I knew Atar Rahman. Bashir and Atar Rahman helped me settle over here. I didn't know anybody over here. So from there on, a lot of people used to come to Bashir's place, and I met a lot of people, a lot of you guys at Bashir's place. So we used to get Razi Mohuiddin and everybody I met at Bashir's place. So it was a really good, friendly environment over there. But my main challenge was that at that time, you know, the Palestinians were struggling against occupation, and there was against the difficulties, they retaliated to the Israeli excesses. So there was some, in retaliation, there was a lot of big news coming over here, showing all those things, and the Muslim community was very much scared. What will happen next? And some of our friends, like Akbar Ali, and we got together, Salim Rahman, Shakeel, and we chalk out a plan. What will we do in a worst case scenario? We will move out from here, all these things. So whenever there was a disturbance in the Middle East, we have a very scary situation over here. So
okay.
that was a challenging things to deal with.
All right. Thank you.
The challenge with Zabih, with Brother Zabih, was the chess game. The time.
And bowling. He was a bowling master.
Yes, he was.
Okay. Mujtaba Ghouse, you want to tell us about when you moved here and what community means to you?
So I'd like to start with that first question. What is a community? What does it mean? Sure. I think a community is a set of people who have some positive feeling for each other and who are willing to give up at least some level of short-term self-interest for the interests of the group as a whole. So, mashallah, there were a lot of people earlier on in the 1980s and maybe even earlier who gave up time with their families and time towards their careers and time that they could have spent watching cricket or football in order to build these institutions and buy these buildings and so on, or put their homes as collateral for a zero interest loan. Mashallah, and so it's to them, some of you, mashallah, are on this call, that we all of this. For myself, I moved here in '93. I was interviewing for a job with a software startup, and during the interview process, I came to Masjid al-Noor, and I was very impressed. I was looking for an area that would be a good place to raise my children, and mashallah, it seemed like you'd all built a great community. At the time, the community was transitioning from one of these places where everyone knows everyone else, and that after prayer you can say, everyone back to my house for chai, to a place that was just much too big. So a few years ago, I spoke briefly to someone at Tarawi, and it turned out he'd been there at the MCA for 6 months, and it was the first time he'd spoken to anyone. And to some degree, that's inevitable as the community grows. It's better than the other challenge of a community disappearing, but it is, one of the challenges that changes over time. I don't know. Have I answered the question?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody's answered the question, and everyone. There's no right or wrong answers in any of these questions. So that's the great thing about it. It's whatever you feel and whatever your memory is. So with that, let's segue to Naeem Raza. Naeem, if you want to just tell us again, tell us when you moved here. Talk about the MCA is known for its diversity. What is the diversity and how have they handled it?
So I moved into the Bay Area in 1983, and I was obviously looking for a place. I moved to US in 1980, and I was an active member of the MSA in Florida. So when I moved here, I was looking for something similar, and I was getting hard time finding something. And I was fortunate to found MCA at that time, which was at Duane Avenue. Brother Alauddin mentioned that. And there was one thing which happened, which really got me into MCA, was that after the Jummah, typically the president stands up and makes an announcement. And may Allah bless Brother Salim Sheikh at that time, he was the president. And he was making an announcement, and he was also smiling. That was the first time I've ever seen somebody making an announcement in a masjid, and it had a smile on his face. And that's it. That attracted me. I said, this is the organization, inshallah, I'm going to spend the rest of my life working with. So that's how I got recruited at MCA. And the other incident I want to share, and then I will come to the diversity. I know I'm going to, inshallah, conclude in 2 minutes, is that the iftars that we used to do behind Masjid Noor on the floor. I remember first year we started that, and we sat on the floor, and it felt like Motel 6. Next year, somebody gave us an idea, and we had a 6-inch wooden bench kind of a thing that we put in. And that felt like a Marriott, right? And now, so to me, I was like, my God, we are so well off now that we actually have a wooden bench, which is 6 inches, and we can sit on the floor and not on the concrete. So that's our humble beginning. I think Brother Shakeel mentioned that the diversity comes from different ethnicities, and they all coming together for the same cause. And I think it is very important for especially the people from MCA that we should remember that our strength is in our diversity. I remember once I went to Florida, and I was, took the kids to Disney World. And when we were going there, there was Jummah. And so I said, let's stop and pray Jummah at place. So I went into a masjid, and I asked somebody, okay, what time is Jummah? Because everybody was speaking Arabic there. And he looked at my face and he says, are you Pakistani? I said, yeah, I'm originally from Pakistan. He said, you should go to Pakistani masjid, and it was just totally blew me off that why can't it be just a masjid for Muslims, and why it has to be ethnically divided. And I think this is how I will sum the beauty of MCA.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to kind of help us move. So we talked with each of you a little bit about how things started. We want to kind of fast forward a little bit, and we've touched upon some aspects of it, but one of the major challenges the MCA faced was the establishment of Grenada Islamic School, GIS, and then all the back and forth, the lawsuits with LSI Logic, dealing with the Planning Commission, the City Council. Dr. Alauddin, as you were talking a little bit about the history and everything, you want to just kind of encapsulate some of that? And I know it's a lot there, but just take us a little bit through some of those challenges.
That's where I think I had Brother Salim Sharif give us the input. I wish I would have listened to his talk before. I remember actually Grenada Islamic School, as one of the brother mentioned, the Mariam School was started in the back there, and some of the really dedicated people were working on it. But now, if I step back, in early 80s when we came, most of us were single. Then we got married, then we had children. But now children started growing and people start worrying, okay, where do we send our children to school to now? And that's where ethnic background that Brother Naeem is mentioning it was not anybody's mind. It was just we were all Muslim, Arab, Pakistani, Palestinian. We got together, and they finally passed a resolution that we need to have a Grand Islamic school. And I still remember the Masjid al-Nur where we had the meeting, and it was passed, it was approved, and the school was actually started in Masjid al-Nur. At that time, Masjid al-Nur modification not even was completed yet. So there were some classes that were held upstairs, and there were some classes held downstairs. In one class, one teacher would have first, second class together. They will have 1 or 2 students in this class and 1 or 2 students of second class, and that's how the Granada school started. MashaAllah, some brothers really committed themselves. They took it was a big sacrifice for those brothers who put their children in those schools. It was a huge sacrifice. It was not a complete school environment, and they still did that. And that's how the Granada school started.
Okay.
I can say something. Yeah.
Okay, please, Salim.
Yeah. I think, Brother Aladdin would mention that, Mariam School started right in the courtyard of Masjid al-Nur in the back rooms. Mm-hmm. My daughter Neda, she was 3.5 years old at that time. And I put her in that school. She was, in a pre-nursery or something like that. I don't know what they were, learning, but it was like a community helping the community to come up with something, right? Mm-hmm. So that was one thing. And really, we were very close community, very, very close. We used to have Saturday morning meetings with Mehboob Khan, Salim Sharif, every Saturday morning. And we would enjoy it. And we'll do some exercise. And we'll do some judo karate in the Masjid Nur prayer hall. And that was going on with Arabs and non-Arabs together. That was a big thing, inshallah.
And don't forget the breakfast in the end.
Yeah, breakfast in the end, of course.
So Bashir, your children also went to Granada School, and you want to pick up that story?
They did, but I think a little bit later. So I wasn't involved in the GIS, but I was definitely involved in the MCA process for conditional use permit. And I think that was our most major challenge, to organize the community, organize the Santa Clara community at large, bring lots of people into the city council to have it approved. That was actually one of the major challenges that MCA faced. And it used to be that whenever city council or the planning commission used to meet, we used to have a really loaded full house at the city council. We used to line up people so that they can speak in front of the council or the planning commission. I think that was a major challenge. I'm trying to recall the brother who used to work for CARE, and he organized a very good campaign so that public at large, can support us. Can anybody remember that person's name who used to work for CARE?
Abdurrahman Barakji. The CARE was started by Umar Ahmad, Abdurrahman Barakji, and
No. Aladdin, he's referring to, they hired a director, young brother, very energetic, I forgot his name.
Communication director.
Hilal Omera.
Yeah, he did a really excellent job doing communication to the Santa Clara community at large.
Corner of Monroe and El Camino. Yeah.
We had a large billboard on Highway 237. In fact, he used Salman as a
Salman, your son.
Yeah, Salman, my son, as a poster. Why us to LSI? So that was the campaign. Why are you bothering us? So that was quite a challenge for MCA to really get the permissions, but finally we got it. One of the key persons at the Planning Commission who supported us, I'm still trying to recall his name, he was the Planning Commission head, and he really pushed our case.
Byron Fleck.
Yeah, yes. Byron Fleck was a key person who made the difference in Planning Commission to have our case approved.
Okay. We want to just mention that just for the purpose of this call, that even though we're covering the Bay Area and the MCA, there were other Islamic institutions in the Bay Area, and one of them was the South Bay Islamic Association, SBIA. And Hamad, I think it sounds like your father, uncle were actually actively involved in the starting of that. You want to just share with us some memories from that time?
Yeah, so I think when I came here, I think there was already a little bit of, I think, what you call ideological differences in the community, how you want to build it. MCA was more kind of inclusive, more Arab dominated, more kind of MSA, ISNA kind of directed organization. Okay, whereas there was a huge group of Muslims in the Bay Area who were more Pakistani or Indian Muslim oriented towards that. So the division started, I think, way early. I still remember a couple of meetings in the Sunnyvale Community Center where everybody wanted to build a one community, one masjid, but then the SBI kind of decided to kind of pursue its own path. And in my view, it was a good thing, actually, because rather than fighting about how the organization or the Muslim community needs to be run, okay, it's better to create where people are more comfortable. And there's a whole group of different people like Sattar Aidan and Wahid Siddiqui, and there's a whole group of SBIA supporters, Brother Zafar Sheikh, and they kind of...
Marz
Marz Dahlin was like just an extraordinary person that he kind of drove that organization. And I remember the first on the 3rd Street Mosque that was first built. It was a big achievement at that time. Before that, they used to have a big warehouse also on I think on Montague Expressway. Okay. Main Street. And there were some very silent supporters of who were not active, but like I think Brother Salam Qureshi was both on MCA and on the SBI. He kind of contributed a huge amount of money to get, I think, a lot of these organizations going. So I've seen both these organizations grow, and mashallah, okay, it's very gratifying to see it. That's there's the overlap in certain areas, but there's providing services to different community members. Okay,
Javed, can I just interject one comment? In fact, when in 1984, when we came here, Brother Naeem, myself, Brother Altaf, Brother Chaudhary, who has moved to Sacramento, we all used to go to SBI for halakha. Masjid Noor did not have any program. In fact, all the halakas were Brother Anwar, Father Anwar Patel, Maulana, may Allah give him a lot of health and everything, mashallah. He and there's a brother from South Africa. So we used to have halakha there for many months. That's and then after that, when MCA, where Masjid Noor finally got a permit and we got Hafiz for Tarawih prayers, then we moved back to Masjid Noor. So SBI has always been part of this community. I would say that it's a major milestone. And
Shakeel, yeah. What I wanted to add that, the reason we were going to the South Bay on the 3rd Street was that it was nobody was coming there even for, very, very few people. So Brother Naeem Raza and all other, we decided that we should go there and make it our presence over there, right, inshallah. So that was another reason also, inshallah. Yeah.
If I add to a little bit, Hamad, my reflection of the, I don't know, it's negatively or positively, but the major reason at that time, if I remember, was because the warehouse at Main and Montague, a group of brothers wanted to buy it and take the loan from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a huge dispute. Mm-hmm. One group wanted no interest base and one wanted interest base. And Brother Salim Sheikh, may Allah bless him, his house used to be in North San Jose, where the Brother Shamim Usmani house is right now, in that area. And in his house, I still remember a meeting where we had a very hardly contested debate. And that's where the split happened. The brother who did not want to have Sood-based building, they separate. Then this building was bought, and unfortunately, zoning issue and the parking issue became a crisis again.
Yes.
And that's where may Allah give the best reward to Brother Salam Qureshi. He bailed them out.
Yes.
He bought their building, and then they end up moving to 3rd Street, and they bought the building at 3rd Street.
That's correct. Yeah. That's the way it happened. Yeah, that's I remember.
And really, but there was a blessing at the end of. If you look at the other way, it's a definitely blessing, because then that community grew, mashallah. A lot of dedicated brothers.
Yeah. So
a lot of dedicated brothers. They did the work over there.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to kind of advance the conversation a little bit. We have Razi Mohuiddin who's joined us. And what I want to do, first of all, Razi, if you can just share with us when you moved to the community, but beyond that one, you were here when the dot-com euphoria was happening and the bubble with it. Just give us a sense of what it felt like to be a Muslim in the Bay Area at that time.
Thank you, Brother Javed. Glad to join over here. I moved to the community in the mid-'80s, like most of the other folks over here, and remember praying at Masjid Noor, and later on the tarps outside at Masjid Noor here before we eventually bought the large building that became the MCA Islamic Center in Santa Clara here. I think the time in those mid to late 90s here in the dot-com thing, there was a tremendous amount of excitement, and that's where we saw a significant increase in the size of the community across the board. That included, people who have come in kind of in the overall software and hardware development here. So what we saw is a significant increase in a very, very educated community that moved into this area and really became MCA. Then at that point in time, really became one of the largest communities in the United States as a result of that. And many innovative things were being done at that point in time, not only in kind of the overall internet and on the computer side, but also in terms of how the new organizations that were being formed and spawned off from within the MCA community. And we talked about a little bit about CARE and some of the other organizations, but similar organizations like that that came through here. So very exciting time.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'd like to kind of segue to Naeem Raza. You talked about, Razi, about the acquisition of and the establishment of one of the largest Islamic centers in the United States. So Naeem, at that time, from a planning standpoint, Vision 2020 was started. It was and it's interesting, we are in the year 2020, just at the tail end of it. Walk us through what were some of the thoughts and the predictions, more than 20 years ago. How many of them did we accomplish, and where did we fall short?
So again, as Brother Razi said, that there was a very innovative. So this was another innovative thing that MCA wanted to do. And they created a planning committee or a Vision 2020 committee. And I believe Salim Sheikh was in there, but Tariq Murad was in there, and a few other brothers. And one of the things that we asked them was that if we think about the vision or we think about the building or facilities, should we think about based upon our resources or should we dream? And so the instructions given back to us as dream. Dream how you think it can be, and dream you think how it should be. Obviously, last time I mentioned that one of the things, the way it started was saying, when in 2020, the mayor of Santa Clara came with the 500 Hajis returning back from the Hajj, and we got corrected that even though it's not in Santa Clara, but mashallah, Umar Deen, now son of Brother Alauddin, is now in the city council in Sunnyvale, so which is an honor to us. And also there are other Bay Area communities like Los Cerritos, Brother Javedullah is there. So some of those political affiliations or political ambitions may not have reached to the level that we wanted to, but I think they are happening. The other thing, which was the most interesting thing, was that when MCA building was bought, the original vision that we had was actually half of the size of the MCA 10 that we have, right? So this we thought, okay, it's going to have this and this and this and this. And mashallah, we bought the facility, which was twice as big at what we had thought about. And then mashallah, now we even have gone from the building concept to the concept of campus. And now we have MCA 2.0 and 3.0. And our community was supposed to be few thousand people. And now I will say it's easily from 5,000 to 10,000 people who have been benefiting from the community. So in my mind, some of the things, yes, we were not there on the mark, but on the other things, either we met it or we exceeded it.
Yes.
One comment. Like Brother Naeem mentioned, the vision is I really would like to pray for Brother Mahbub Khan. mashallah. So when Masjid Noor, like Brother Razi and I think Tahseen also mentioned, we were praying, the internal capacity is 300 people. And we used to have 300 people praying outside. And I remember one Eid prayer also, we prayed a couple of Eid prayers in the parking lot. Inside full, outside full. So total capacity became 700. At that time, Brother Mahbub Khan was very, very adamant about getting a place which is at least 5 times bigger than that. And we all opposed him. Every single person said, oh, why are you talking about, right? Even Brother Hamza Yusuf used to be part of the, at that time, part of the our Shura, and he was giving khutbahs and everything. He also opposed it. I remember that in the back rooms again. But Brother Mahbub Khan said, no, you will never, you don't know in 5 years' time how people are going to move here and all that. He, mashallah, he was a visionary, in my opinion. One of the best person, I mean, I have ever known, basically. And now look at it, so like that was a vision, only one person's vision at that time.
I just want to add one small thing. Not only he was the visionary, but he was also one of the most humble person I've come across in my life. Yes. He would actually literally sell a $5 sandwich to everybody just because he wanted to raise money for the masjid. May Allah bless his soul.
So talking about vision, so Najam, as you mentioned, you were born here. I'm just trying to compare and contrast communities. How would the community in the Bay Area compare to the community, say, in Chicago? Just give us a feel.
It's similar in differences. It started like the same way in Chicago. We were all together, the African American brothers, the Arab brothers, and the Indo-Pak brothers. But in Chicago, unfortunately, the community split. The Arab brothers went their ways. We used to pray, and the funny thing is, when we first started MCC in '69, and before that, we used to pray in the Elijah Muhammad Temple in Southside Chicago. So we actually prayed in the African American communities because we had no building. There was no place for us to pray anything. So I remember when I was a small child going there for prayer services. And so finally in '69, we bought a place, and African American brothers also came with us, some of us. At that time, Elijah was still alive, so Mohuiddin wasn't there in terms of renouncing his father at that point. He did it later in the mid-'70s. But Mohuiddin came with us. And so this is interesting. The head of the Nation of Islam's son came with our community. He left Elijah Muhammad community because he knew from his teaching, because he went to Saudi Arabia and learned there. His father sent him to Medina University. And so when he came back, he knew his father was wrong, but he wanted public to stay at that moment. He kept quietly told his father that my father was wrong. So when MCC was started in '59, he came with us. So that was an interesting thing. So when MCC formed, like we said, it was a small community, like you guys have it here, and then it grew. And unfortunately, right now, it has split a lot of ethnic lines. That's what I would say. I would hope here in the Bay Area we don't split to that based on ethnicity, and the other part of the first and second generation struggles. It's still an MCC, but they have gone a lot to the first generation now, alhamdulillah, in MCC, because a lot of the next generations of kids, who are kids at that time now, young resources, are taking over the community because the elder generations have basically retired or passed away. So that transition has happened, and so that part is there more. I know MCA is in the process of trying to get more young people and resources, people, second generation involved. So that takes some time, and that's a challenge. And the other challenge in MCC was converts. The good thing is when we were small, we had a few converts presidents also. So we do have converts presidents who became president of MCC early on. That gave a lot of converts comfort that our community was always welcome. And so it's a challenge. And I know in MCA, how do we keep, we attract converts and those people, but to retain them and encourage them is always a challenge.
Okay,
so those are the two challenges I see.
We'll segue actually into that conversation a little bit later about the challenges and what we want to kind of go forward. For now, what I'd like to do is, again, just advance the timeline a little bit. So obviously a very nationally and worldwide, and a very important event happened on September 11th, attacks. And I'm sure everyone here on this call has a memory of it. Would a couple of you want to just kind of share something, where you were on that day and if there's something memorable?
Yeah, I was at work, and so one thing that's really struck me at that time, okay, we had like a group admin. She was an older lady. I forgot her name. She was probably in the early 60s, okay, and she was a very, very nice person, okay. We used to make all our travel arrangements. So she saw me, okay, and coming in, I went into my office, and she came into the office and asked me specifically, okay, why are you doing it? Okay, why are you doing this thing? Okay, so I still remember that term. Okay, I think she didn't mean any bad thing about it, but somehow she just connected everything. Okay, with me, okay, because I was the only, I guess, the black guy in the organization. I think she didn't even realize, okay, what she was saying, okay, but this is exactly what I remember, and this sentence is embedded in my mind, okay. And then I kind of try to explain to her, okay,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, Mujtaba, where were you on 9/11, and what memory do you have?
So I was still getting ready for work. Clearly, I don't go in as early as Hamad Bhai. And we turned on the news. We heard from relatives in the East Coast that something was happening. And I remember my son turning to me and saying, what happens if people keep attacking America? Because he had this sense that this was our country and we were being attacked. And then going into work, basically no work got done. Everyone was just standing around talking. But I remember people looking at me, and at the time we didn't know for certain that it was Muslims, but there was an assumption, and there was definitely a sense of separation there where there hadn't been before. And I remember thinking that this is going to impact the way Muslims are treated for my life and the life of my children, and maybe the life of my children's children if it turns out to have been Muslim.
Okay, so Razi Mohuiddin, I know you were actually actively involved in the community's response. You want to just kind of help encapsulate what some of those changes and responses were as a community?
Yeah, I think, it was very obvious kind of in the aftermath of 9/11 that we had to make a decision. And the decision that we had to make was, before we were either ambivalent or we were in kind of maybe in a denial. As people who have migrated from different countries, we really did not necessarily see whether America was still a country for us or was that a foreign country to us. I think many of us maybe never really thought through that level of thinking to make a decision. And we had to make a decision at that point in time. From my perspective, I think there were two decisions that I made personally, and I think many of us probably felt in the same way. Number one, that we are Muslim. And actually not necessarily in any particular order, but I'm just saying that one, we are Muslim, and number two, that we are American. And we had to essentially make that decision that because we are Muslim and we are American, we have to make sure that we essentially stand by our principles and make sure that we communicate to the world what really Islam and Muslims stand for, and differentiate from the acts of a few. That we did. So in that respect, one of the things that we did was we actually met with a number of authorities, kind of convey and created a lot of open houses and things of that nature in order to essentially talk to the community about really the difference between and really what the true Islam and true Muslims stand for. So that was a very important component that we communicated to the community, to the government authorities, and so on. I think Brother Shakeel was actually the president at that point in time, so I'm sure he felt of MCA, so I'm sure he felt and was involved in a number of different meetings with government authorities, police, law enforcement, and others. So he might have a perspective there as well.
Shakeel Masood, you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, so actually, where I was at that day, actually, I was like Brother Razi said, I was president, and Kamal Kreatham was vice president. And his son and my son Harun and his son is Omar, same age, Granada school, same grade. So 6:30 or something, 6:40. My habit is to take a nap, after the Fajr and everything. He woke me up. He called me. He said, "Do you know what happened?" I said, "No, I don't know what happened." He said, "Just turn the TV on." So I turned the TV on, everything. It was like 6:45. California time. And so then I said, so what should we do? And mashallah, he said, first of all, we have to close GIS, because 7 o'clock, GIS opens at 8 o'clock, and around 7 o'clock, all the teachers start coming, staff start coming. And he used to live very close to MCA those days. And he basically, I asked him to just go to the building and everything. So basically, that was the and then he stopped. We called all the teachers but the thing which I remember, a few hours later, the police sheriff chief came, I forgot his name, he came to MCA, and he was very kind of upset. Why did you guys close school? What are we here for? That is my memory. I remember that. So, and after then on, I was in meetings, but the Naeem was also involved, and we have so many meetings with the police and all that. So my memory is like Brother Hamad said, in the office, he was in the office, right? So maybe it would have been done. But when I went to the office, I used to work for AMD. Then I felt that uncomfortable feeling because most those days it was very white Silicon Valley, by the way. I was one of the few non-white in whole entire AMD. So they used to look at me, very suspiciously and everything. And then I remember one more thing, Brother Farhad, may Allah give him also jazaa. He's another pillar of this community. He wrote a very nice email and about the 9/11, etc. I wish I can recover that from some archives or something. And it was generic, who we are, Muslims, and who did it, and some small group of people and all that. And I took that email, I forwarded to the entire AMD. Can you believe me? Can you believe that? I said, no, this is, and everybody came to me. They said, this is the best. Who wrote it? And so that was, I wish that is something which Farhad may have it, a copy of it, but he's the one who wrote it, and then we forwarded to it. So I think it was very uncomfortable feeling in the beginning, but the community really around MCA and everybody is very, they poured a lot of stuff. We received a lot of and everything, but we did get a couple of calls, very nasty calls also. Get out of here and all that. I remember Masih Noor, at that time, we had the recording voicemail, and we had some messages. But majority of the neighbors, they were very supportive, as far as I remember.
Looks like Naeem, you want to share something?
Yeah, I want to share specifically things that happened. I was in the board of trustees at that time. So we got a call from the Santa Clara police chief, and he basically told us to open up the masjid. And I just said, no way we're going to open up the masjid. And he wanted us to pray Jummah. And so we had to go back and forth multiple times. And then we agreed, okay, we're going to open up. He said, we will give you guys, foolproof protection, open up the masjid. So we announced that we're going to have a Jummah over there. And when I went there, there were squad cars all over all the entrances of MCA. There were Santa Clara police squad cars. And then Jummah happened, alhamdulillah. And then, after the Jummah, one of the things that happened was there was a Muslim police officer. So he told me to have him make announcements that, he's a Muslim, he's a police officer, because the community was very scared. And he made the announcement and everything. And then after that, I remember in the GIS conference room, we were sitting and we were discussing how we open up and everything. And I kind of just took the liberty of thanking him to have the squad cars around our masjid and give us the feeling for the protection of the community. It says, you only can speak what you saw. You had no idea that I had dozen people sitting in the prayer hall, all ready to go if anybody ever wanted to move. And that was literally a shock to me, because we, as mashallah, MCA is a different demographic. We don't know who's white, who's black, who's brown. But he said there were around dozen people, police officers, sitting in our MCA prayer hall, ready to take action if there was anything which would go on. so that was on the MCA story, and then obviously the Granada School Open. On a personal level, I will tell you guys, even though I had my own software company at that time, and as a practice, we used to, there were 3-4 Muslims in our office, and we used to all gather in my room, and we used to pray all our regular prayers. And we've been doing it for years, and there was never an issue. And on that day, when 9/11 happened, we did the same routine thing, and we prayed our Zohar prayer. And after a little while, my HR manager came to me and she says, there are some employees which are saying that you guys are getting into the room to celebrate the plane crashes. And I'm going like, wait a minute, we've been doing this for it. So I had to call a, kind of a company meeting and explain it to them that this is our regular prayers. And just imagine the bias not only coming from your teammates, but these were all employees of our company, and I was the founder, CEO, and owner of the company, and even I was being accused of celebrating. So to me it was like really very tense time. And just the last thing, Brother Shakeel, I think we did a survey at Masjid Noor, and there were like 50 positive calls and there were like 2 negative calls. And there were bouquets and chocolates and everything which was left on the footstep of our mosque, which was really gratifying. And one last thing, the first community who came forward was the Japanese American community. They walked in with a lot of toys and gifts and everything, because they said they remember it from their days when they were being put in concentration camps, that they wanted to be there for the Muslim community, and really thank them for that.
Okay.
Just want to add one thing to recognize people. The Santa Clara police chief that we are referring to, I think his name was Steve Lodge. He's now since retired.
Great guy.
Yes, you're right. Jazakallah khair, Steve Lodge. Yes.
Thank you for sharing, Razi. And actually, as we kind of touched on a little bit more, we wanted to kind of be expansive and not just think about the MCA. I think Brother Hamad talked about the SPIA. So I want to actually segue over to you, Razi, because one of the ways we started off the call was just asking about what community means to you. And you have been kind of the founder, visionary of the West Valley Muslim Association. Give us a sense of, again, just try to answer those questions. What does community mean to you? And give us a sense of how it's kind of the community itself has grown, diversified. And so just give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah. My definition of community, and you see these today now, what has happened is that the community has now transformed into virtual communities effectively, right? In the day of our friends are connected across the world. What community means to me is that as a human, and especially in this pandemic, this has become even more obvious, right? What is the connection that we have? What is the connection that we have with our family, with our friends, with our relatives and others here, right? So community to me is one where essentially we, share our joys and our, ups and downs in our life. And to the extent that this community is something which is at least like-minded in certain areas, for example, it becomes a critical area. So growing up over here, or essentially, spending time over here, especially coming from as an immigrant, one of the key parts of it was, okay, how do we make sure that our religion and our values are preserved, that we take the great things that America has to offer, but also at the same time, we make sure that the values that Islam preaches us are preserved effectively, and not only for us, but our children. So to me, the community is really even more critical for our children, so that they have friends and they have other people that they can look up to that share the same values. And that was kind of the primary reason I feel like I have been involved in MCA, as well as finding of WBMA here. So that has been a critical aspect to me.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So I want to kind of help close some of this conversation. Obviously, it's a huge timeline, and there's no way we can capture each of the major events. But one thing I'd like to kind of give each of you a chance to do is to share 2 things. One is something that you feel most proud of as a community member. and one thing that either scares you or one piece of advice you would have for someone who's going to be watching this 10, 20, 50 years down the road. So with that, I'll open it up. Dr. Alauddin.
What I'm proud of, all the history that was just said. I mean, really, I think as a community together, we have achieved a lot. We have come pretty far. We have gotten involved. Our children are politically now aware and they're politically involved. It's Allah's blessing. My son got involved. Nothing from me, honestly. I have no idea how that happened, but alhamdulillah. That's the pride that I have. Our community has matured up a lot. Actually, you talked about 9/11. 9/11 is the reason for our community maturity, I believe, because that gave us the sense of awareness of ourselves, where we stand, and how can we defend our rights and our position and be part of the U.S. dream. So that's the pride that I have. What I'm afraid of this old mind not getting out of the way and letting the youth take the leadership. And I feel if that is not allowed, then our future community may not mature up, become mature enough to carry on the banner that we need them to carry. But alhamdulillah, I'm very happy that this year in both West Valley and in MCA, some faces have changed, youth have come forward, and I hope that carries on. That's my input.
Shakeel Masood?
Yes. So I think, like Brother Alauddin said, it's a dream. You know, I can from Masjid Noor Church to all the way to MCA. It is really a dream in a very short span of time, because of the thing which I like to also Brother Hamad mentioned a little bit is Arab, non-Arab was very natural thing in the beginning. We are coming from different backgrounds and everything, trying to understand. Even forget about Arab, non-Arab, the four school of thoughts, right? We always had that, okay, why is this guy doing things? So it's a learning process. We went through it. But the sincerity, like Brother Alauddin also mentioned about those three Libyan brothers, the sincerity which I've seen as a pure Muslim, you know, if you dig deep, there's a lot of sincerity. So that is a big positive thing in MCA community, that if you get to know people and where they're coming from, and then after that it is Islam. It is nothing else. And so we have accomplished a lot. Granada School, our children have grown up and educated. At least my son one son has gone through from pre-K to all the way to middle school and everything. So that is a big there's so many things we can talk about. My fear is that, like Brother little bit, it is the old guard is another thing, is there's a gap. The generation gap is not there. I mean, not being filled. So the new people who come, they don't have any connection. They don't have any connection with the old people, right? So there should be a mix and match, you know, between the old, because we have all gone through so much pain and all the LSI and this and that and things. So we have a lot of Brother Muhammad Ali and all that. So my thing is that the fear I have is that we bring a lot of youth involved, which is a good thing, but there has to be some sort of connection between the history and before the guidance from the old people who are living. I'm really concerned about some of the brothers who are like Brother Ali Matwali, Brother Lai Bakshan, all these people who were involved in the beginning, and even Brother Wahid Siddiqui, you know, from SBI side. And these people are gems, you know, that we need to really benefit from their advice and their wisdom somehow. That part, that's what we are working with Brother Naeem to establish, if we can.
Okay. Hamad?
I think generally we need to be very proud of, as a community, that's what you achieved, especially in the Bay Area. Actually, this is like a huge community, and it is definitely serving the spiritual need and the need of the community as far as Islamic schools is concerned, and even Sunday schools has played a very big role in the communities. One thing that I miss, I think, which Naeem talked about, this Vision 2020. I think we should have a vision of like a 2030 that we as a community should become a much more integral part of the society, okay, at large, okay, which we have still not there, okay. I would love to see in the Bay Area a hospital run by a Muslim organization with a Muslim value set, or so which serves a larger community, just like the Jewish community or other communities have done, okay. And until that happens, I think we'll still be very like a self-contained, happy in ourselves kind of community. Yeah. So I think that should be our vision next, 2030, 2040. That's we need to become a broader part of the whole society.
All right, thank you. Tahseen Adib.
Alhamdulillah, after being in the country before moving to the Bay Area, I had seen the differences between the Indo-Pakistan group versus the Arab groups. Had seen in many masajids across the East Coast, as well as in Washington, D.C., and in the Midwest in Cleveland area, like the Arabs are different. When I moved here and the MCA or Masjid al-Nur got started, it was a very unique community. And I had never seen like a community coming together with all the Arabs, Black Muslims. We had very few Black Muslims. In spite of that, we did mature very well. That was one of the best aspects and the positive things of the MCA. I still remember Brother Khattab, who had mentioned it in one of the khutbahs or after the announcement he made it, the Vision 2020. What we missed there, if you want to take it as a negative or anything, was expansion of this small masajids or the musallas. That we missed it in 2020. I think Brother Razi, thanks to him and all his work, we started the WAMA. It was quite a distance to travel and come with all the parking issues and all these things. Those are the happy times and all these things. Alhamdulillah, we have many, many more masajids at this time. But the thing moving forward, whether it's a 2020, 2030, 2040, or whatever it is in the two areas where I see we have a deficiency. I see, Alhamdulillah, the Nisa group helping the women has started. Alhamdulillah, that's a very positive. But we are seeing so many brothers suffering in our community and they have no way to go. And with their adamance related to that, which I'm dealing right now with that situation, with all sorts of problems, there is no organization or no khatib or no imam who wants to help the brother side. And the last point, which I always say is like, what happens to the seniors? Where is our senior center? We started with the youth center. We did with all these things. We sacrificed it. How are we going to be united at some point? If you look at it, the generation gap is going on. Recently, I don't know if I did post it, like Wissam Sharif's dad passed away. 2 days before that, his elderly uncle passed away. Now we have missed a generation. These were the core people who are started the masajids in and organizations. We don't have any support. Unfortunately, they did, alhamdulillah, they died in the homes, but we don't have a community for a senior center or something like that. So that's a vision should be looking forward to.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing the Tahseen. And just as a point of correction, so actually some of those things, or probably many of those, including satellite masajids and everything, were part of Vision 2020. So I think what you are actually addressing is actually the gaps where we as a community were not able to execute on those. So with that, Najmul, hey.
As everybody said, I think what I pray, this community has a great start. MashaAllah, has lots of things going for it. And what I pray is for our kids of growing up as Muslims and understanding what Islam is all about, and our grandchildren and forward. Because this is what the essence of our community should be, is to make sure the nurturing, educating our next generation and all the different Muslim community members who come. And I think that's the challenge part. And I keep praying and making du'as for our community success, or whatever community we are, with Valley or MCA. But that is the challenge. And I keep praying that we keep going and trying to achieve that challenge of how do we make sure our kids are understand Islam, are comfortable in Islam, because a lot of Muslim young people leaving Islam also. And so we have to be aware of that, understand that, and try to make young people understand what is Islam and how Islam makes us fit as a community in the United States. As an American saying, be comfortable in our own skin. And so we have to portray that to our kids to make sure it is okay to be a Muslim in America. It is very natural. It's okay. There's nothing wrong. You're not unique in that sense that you have whatever. You're just a normal Muslim, happen to be an American living in the Bay Area. And so that is my dream. That is my hope and prayer, that our community grow to that level. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for sharing. Sheer Ahmed?
I'm actually proud of sincerity, honesty, diversity, and humbleness of this community. And these are American values, these are Islamic values, these are universal values. I think I'm proud of that. I think the challenge that we have moving forward is to how to get youth involved and take the charter. I think that's the really main challenge we have. Our youth is really not involved. And most of the time, I think the girls are involved, not really the boys. If you look at all the MSAs out there, it's really headed by mostly women and girls, but not the boys. So that's really going to be our challenge, to keep them in line.
Okay. Salim Rahman?
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, we are very much proud of this community. I remember our Amir Mustafa Al-Turk. He visits almost lot of areas in USA on a regular basis. And whenever he used to come to Santa Clara and praying Fajr in Masjid al-Nur, he would say, wow, I've not seen that many people in any masjid. They are coming together for the prayer and the Fajr also. So that was one thing that makes us very much proud that at least we have accomplished that part, at least that we are together. We are together for the sake of only one, for the sake of Islam only, nothing else. And then, I remember when I took my kids back, to Pakistan after 9/11 and after attack on Iraq, I said, man, that's it. I don't want to stay there. And then I went back and then I realized my kids would be telling me, oh, Daddy, we were going to masjid over there in Pakistan. The women and the girls, they cannot go to masjid. And then I will be started thinking, and then, anyway, to cut a long story short, I decided to come back. And then, here we are here again with our difference of opinions, and all together, they need to be resolved. They need to be looked at, in a more friendly way to how to look at those things. The differences are everywhere, right? In Sahaba, even the differences were over there. They fought, right? But they respected each other. So that's, I think, what we should be expecting, that we have our differences, but we respect it, and we try to resolve on the basis of our, from the Sunnah of Rasulullah and then the Quran. I think we do that, inshallah. There's a lot of potential in this community, and we're going to grow bigger and bigger, inshallah. And all this vision 2030 or 2040, or ICNA's vision, but that 2050 will have a president in the White House. Inshallah, all that had to be, inshallah. We should be thinking on those lines too, and dreaming big and making the institutions strong. That's what we need, inshallah.
So Razi Mohuiddin, what are you most proud of from an accomplishment standpoint? And again, challenges going forward, or advice you'd give next generations?
I think in general, I'm really proud of the activities and how dynamic the MCA Center has been across the board. Many other communities have tried to replicate this and haven't been quite successful. There have been a few that I think are exceptions, but in general, the dynamicism that happens at MCA has been great. There has been involvement at the youth level. There has been involvement at the women level. Seniors, juniors, every time you walk into the community, especially pre-pandemic, either on Friday or Friday night or Saturday, it will be, beaming with, the number of people that are there. And I think that's really the most valuable thing that's over there. I actually am extremely optimistic about the Muslim community in general in the Bay Area, as well as America. In there, you don't go 2 or 3 exits down on any freeway, especially in the Bay Area and probably in many other cities, without actually having a masjid very close by. The other day, I was thinking, if I go from my place in Saratoga all the way to Sacramento, every 3rd exit there's probably a masjid there. That exists between that entire route over there. So I think it's really, really great and proud to see that that's there. also think that we are seeing a tremendous amount of involvement of the community in civic matters, whether it is in government, whether it is in elected officials, and other cases like nonprofit in terms of helping the needy, helping the poor. So I think I see a very, very bright future for our community to continue to be an integral part of this society on an ongoing basis.
But Javed, one comment. So nobody has mentioned care, Amin housing, Nisa brother mentioned, and then the senior center which brother Tassin talked about. Jazakallah khair, brother Manzoor Ghori, he was working on that project. I don't know what happened to that. So anyway, so these are a lot of institutions, especially care, has been.
Razi did mention that. Yeah, that a lot of institutions started from here.
So on that note, Shakeel, why didn't you just say, so you want to just mention who CARE is?
I think it is, again, is if I remember correctly, it's again the post 9/11 time, then it really was founded, or right before then or after that. Brother Umar Ahmed was the founder of it. And then again, Brother Razi and Brother Fawaz Khatib did serve on the boards, and he can probably give you the history more. But it is the social justice, the organization which has really done a lot of, supported a lot of Muslims. And I remember when, right after 9/11, there were about 300 plus people got interviewed by FBI. And of course, we had meetings with FBI also in MCA, etc. And then there was a lot of things going on. So CARE was really, really very instrumental. I think Razi can mention a little bit more about it, but he was on the board. And then there was another organization called Islamic Chamber of Commerce, ICCI. Brother Yusuf, Brother Hatim Radwan, may Allah give him also health, and he's the one who started that. And then there are quite a few small organizations. They were there. So it's not that only we just stayed inside the masjid and that was the focus, GIS and everything.
Hadaya also, yeah.
Hadaya Foundation is another star, So there are a lot of the things were happening. And Rahima, of course, how can I forget about that, right? That is amazing work that these brothers have taken upon them. So the thing is, once you have some peace of mind that you have a masjid, you have a school, you have a community, then people with different strengths, they come out and they do their things, and then that is exactly what MCA is not MCA. It is, in my opinion, Bay Area, it is basically a small country. I mean, if you look at it, restaurants, and we are supporting each other. So positive thing is that we have come a long way, but the challenge is that we have to support Muslim businesses, and we have to start build so many more institutions, etc. Point is the senior center. I would like to have somebody talk to Brother Manzoor Ghori and see where that is.
No, the organization started by Brother Mahajanedi. What's the
ING? Absolutely. And why we forgot Zatuna? Zatuna is a world class, in my opinion. I was kind of a little bit apprehensive in the beginning or something, but amazing the way that it has come out. These are the institutions we need more.
So
this is amazing,
Yeah, so I'm actually not going to talk about the organization I'm proud of. I'll tell you what I'm proud of.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I was not a very practicing Muslim when I came to this country. The Islam was just taking as a granted, and because we were born, masjids are there, everything is there, and everybody doesn't like them always in Pakistan, and that's how we grew up. Until I came to this country, and that's when I was introduced to Islam really in this country. And the reason I stayed Muslim is not because of this organization, it's because of the sincerity of the people that I met, which are Muslims in this community and in this country. I never could ever imagine that there are honest, sincere Muslims ever existed, because when we were growing in Pakistan, this was not something we knew about. So what I'm really proud of is the people, and this belongs to, regardless of ING, Zatuna, MCA, SPIA. Everywhere you go, you find the most sincere, the most humble people that you come across. And I think this is very important for us, for me, it's because I benefited, because not only I became a Muslim, but I stayed a Muslim because I could see role models in my life that I could never imagine that they existed, because we used to always read the Sahaba, that they did this, how honest they were. But they were never those people that you can talk to, you can meet with them. So that's what I'm most proud of, is that the best human beings I have met, I won't even call them just the best Muslim, but the best human being I have met by coming to in this community. The concern I have is how I was in Pakistan, is that now our next generation is become very complacent, right? They see the masjid, they have seen the school, they have seen the institution, and everything exists. And unfortunately, they may not have the same drive or the same understanding that how these communities, these institutions were created by the sacrifice and sincerities of all these people. So that would be my only concern, that somehow we need to keep passing this along to our next generation and say that just don't become complacent, because this is how we were and we change after coming to this country. Don't become complacent as living into a Muslim countries and not care about the deen and not care about the people. And deen, in my essence, I'm one of those believers that Hukukul Abad is really the essence of the deen, which is taking care of the other human being, not just the Muslims only. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Maharaj. I want to thank all our guests today: Hamad, Taseen Adib, Dr. Alauddin, Shakeel Masood, Najmul Hay, Bashir Ahmed, Salim Rahman, Razi Mohuiddin, and Naeem Raza. Think of this as a message in a bottle, except it'll be online. This is a record which I hope will be supplemented by other accounts. I'd like to leave you with two quotes, one from President Lyndon B. Johnson, which I thought was very relevant. It says, if future generations are to remember us with gratitude rather than contempt, we must leave them with more than the miracles of technology. We must leave them a glimpse of the world as it was in the beginning, not just after we got through with it. And I hope in some ways we kind of captured that. And the other quote I wanted to just leave you with was, I think many of us found to be a very inspirational person, was Muhammad Ali. He said, we have one life, it soon will be past. What we do for God is all that will last. Thank you for watching or listening. Assalamu alaikum, and peace be with you.